Father, we just pray as we deal with a very serious and deadly concern in our culture and in the church as well, that you grant wisdom and open ears to hear and desire to deal with this. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to use the word that describes the. Instead of having two people, why don't you sit in the front row so that you're not behind each other? Okay, move up. You're going to sit there. Move up to the front. Stay there if you want. Stay. Don't go anywhere. Just stay. Okay. The word that I'm using, when I speak of such evils and evil people, what do you think I'm dealing with? If you were to put a clinical diagnostic category on it, what do you think you'd be talking about? What kind of person? Who said that? Psychopath. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. That's, for want of any other better name to describe what we're dealing with, that's the name. And the reason how many of you have ever...
When you get away from the mic, it's hard to hear.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. How many of you ever had an experience with someone who's, you found out later was labeled a psychopath? Some of you have. Did it end well for any one of you? Let me see a hand for anyone. One raised the hand that it ended well. It never ends well with these people unless you get rid of them or beat the snot out of them and they don't come back to haunt your life. No, they're around. These people, you can call them that psychopath, you can say they are pure evil. They're committed to evil. And they come into the church, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll get into what we're dealing with. You know why they come into the church? To destroy it. Yeah, that's sure, but there's some, in an even more direct sense, yeah.
There are a lot of easy marks.
Instead of having to yell, come on up to the front.
Oh, God.
And just sit.
There are a lot of easy marks in a church. People are always trying to see the best in other people, and the psychopath just plays on that.
Stay in the front. Just stay like in that row there, around, closer up. Yeah, there are easy marks. I hate to use that expression, but I would put maybe the word vulnerable. Vulnerable young girls, desperate for a relationship. A guy comes in, and suddenly I'm going to read you the character traits of a psychopath, and you listen to this and you see what I'm talking about. He's very glib and really charming, very manipulative. Some people call them a con man. They know how to con people. They know how to win people. They know how to play a game to get people. They have no real emotional affect or interest in any person, but they know how to demonstrate such emotion, such affect. You will find people who will be looking for money. They will have a great reason why they have no money and how they lost their last job because of some really rotten, evil employer or someone who snitched on them about something that wasn't true. And they'll get money from all kinds of people in the church. They have no goals. They're usually getting money from others. They're not working, gainfully employed. They will tell you that they've never had a relationship. Sometimes you're the first relationship, they'll say to a young woman, I've ever had. I've never loved anyone before. You're the first person. Nonsense. We had a situation in one of the churches in the area. A guy like this. Well, someone in the church managed to do a background, and by the way, you can do background checks, and you can work. There are things you can do when you're in a situation like this. The background check came down about this guy who was engaged to a girl in the congregation, not in Ottawa, but in Hudson Saint Lazare, which is across the border in Quebec. And it came back that he was married. And, well, it didn't stop him from getting married to this girl. And it practically, well, Courtney's here? Oh, Barbara's here. Yeah, I'm talking right here. Oh, I didn't realize Courtney's not here then. This is, am I saying too much to say that this situation just about this could have totally destroyed the church? It divided the church completely, so people were no longer supportive of a pastor who was coming down on this situation and against a really, quote, nice guy. I brought Courtney and the father of the woman who wound up marrying this guy. I brought them to Ottawa to give a talk in our congregation. I wanted people to understand this kind of thing happens. They left. They went off on their own. They went to one church. They went to another church. They got involved with different groups of people. Along the way, I got a call from someone one night in southern Ontario where they were heading. The person says, well, I know you're a psychologist, so maybe you can help me dealing with this. I've rented part of my house to a couple, and she describes the couple, and I'm thinking, wow, sounds very, before she even says anything about what's happening, it sounds like this couple that, I know about. And then she says, the woman, and the reason I'm calling is the wife is screaming every night before at bedtime, and what should I do? I said, what should you do? She's screaming. You call the police. She says, but in the morning, she seems okay. I said, that's not good enough. You got to do something. And it was very interesting because within the next day, she did start to do something, and they were gone before anyone even got there. They were gone that fast. This woman committed to this guy who's going to destroy her life. And Barbara and Courtney, they lived through this. I think the church is completely ignorant of the danger that's involved. They have no idea what's coming into the church. Sometimes you're so excited to see, especially if it's a small church, someone new popping in for a visit, and you open yourself up to deadly encounters with a person who knows how to play people like Christians as if they're the easiest mark on the face of the earth, which they often are. One of the things that's another characteristic, a complete liar. Lives by lying. It's not as if he has a guilty conscience. There is no conscience. You're dealing with people who are, their conscience has been seared so long ago that there's nothing left in it that says this is wrong versus this is right. Not only are they liars, but when they've done something that's terrible, there's no remorse. There's certainly no guilt. There's not even remorse that's involved with this. They have no empathy for other people. They have no idea what it is to sympathize with another person, to have sympathy for that person or what that person's experiencing. It's what they can get. That's all that they want, is what they can get. It's not something that came upon them suddenly. People who are living like this as adults have been living like this from childhood on. If you went to their home, they'd say, well, there were things about Johnny that weren't just right. He used to, he had fun in killing some of the little animals he'd find. He'd catch a mouse and he'd torture it, or he would throw rocks at squirrels, and we had a dog and he used to kick the dog or the neighbor's dog. If it barked, he would go over and kick it in the guts. This is the kind of person you're dealing with, complete impulsive behavior. I mean, as I said, he thinks something's going wrong, boom, he's gone. He's out of there, he's out of when we called, I think when they called different churches about him, one or two of the pastors, I think, were just totally supportive of the guy, and they're trying to work through a situation that was terribly dangerous and working it through with the other churches that were becoming infected by this guy. And by the way, you know, he's involved with a young woman who, she's not that young, she was in her early 30s, I believe, at that point. And time is passing for her, and this guy is showing affection and how he knows how to showing love, which wasn't there, but which got her. And, you know, if you'll notice something if on your TVs now, there are, well, this is in Canada, but I know they'd have it in the States. It's called these forensic shows that showing the forensic study, the stuff that's been done catching criminals. Almost every one of them is a psychopath that they're dealing with. Almost every single one. Now, there might be, no, I was going to say, they're all generally men, and it's based upon things that are, and they never run out of stories to have about them. And it's to women, and what it usually is, not usually, it's always women who have been killed, and just really in brutal, horrible ways. And they always lie. Of course I didn't do this, not knowing that the forensics, if they find a hair, a single hair, they can put the person right on that spot and say, you were there and this is it, and they get them. But the cost is enormous because these lives are being taken continually. And I'm very disturbed actually with these shows, because these shows are teaching predators what to be careful about, what not to not leave behind, in any way presume that even a hair would not be found. And so they are becoming more and more, I'm certain, alerted to the dangers for them that are involved in what they're doing. But these are the people that are on the forensics. They will show you these people. They'll go over they don't use the term psychopath or anything because they're just dealing with capture, and then they'll tell you what they got in prison or execution. And in a number of cases, because it is in the States, there is execution, and it warranted it because it was such horrible, horrible crime that they did. Sometimes they were not satisfied even in a quick stabbing. It would be, they'd say there were 30 or 40 stab wounds to the person all over the person's body, and you know, that's the kind of thing. You'd find that these are people who, as not only did they harm animals, they harmed other people. They were delinquents. Often they were treated and dealt with as juvenile delinquents. A number of them went away to homes where, not homes, but schools, not even schools, like reform schools, where they would go and be for, you know, several years, because they were doing some really bad stuff as, you know, young teenagers, for example. And they'd be in these places, and what they would learn is stuff that they didn't know. They'd learn it from other young people who were there and were ahead of them in the art of harming and torturing people and other creatures in this world. So they have a history that goes back in their life. It's not something that came upon them. And at least if you want to look at this as something in terms of just the articles that have been written, and there used to be very little. As a matter of fact, in the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, Volume 5, which came out just this last April, I believe it was. It came out, it was the first time ever that psychopathy and sociopathy, a psychopath and a sociopath, had been distinct labels put on a character pattern of personality disorder. It was never done, it was just under the rubric of personality disorder, they all fit in, but then they've got it down to this. This was left alone. This group as a grouping of people who are committed to this violent course of action, not all of them, and I'll tell you, it's interesting about that. They've never, and the DSM has done all kinds of things with all kinds of behavior disorders that they've labeled as such. This was left alone for a long time. Now there are hundreds of articles being written about it. I say these guys because there are women who are psychopaths, but it's very, very infrequent compared to the men who are living their lives this way feeding off of women, sometimes married to two, like this guy was married to two women at the same time, and there were other women that he had. There's always several women in the scene, and once you've gotten involved, here's the thing, you never get out of involvement with them. They will stalk you, they will find you, everyone's got, you can move, they'll find you on the Facebook or Twitter accounts, they'll find where you are, they go after the people. The only thing to do is here's a phrase that I would put, if the guy seems too good to be true, he is. He's too good to be true. Don't be fooled by him. Don't be fooled by, he's just the greatest guy ever. No, he's not. He's not the greatest guy ever. Don't think you've found the greatest guy ever. Be very, very, very careful, because once you're in it, it's like being in with someone that's tied you and bound you up before you've even been tied and bound, and you're in trouble. You're in trouble already. There's generally been some kind of criminal behavior in the past. I would say if you have, when your kids are growing up, especially with daughters, do a background check, and you can also do a criminal check. Really, I mean, you can do this. Your child's life is involved in this, and you often don't know. So you say, but she met him at church, of course, because that's the feeding ground. Let me give you a few traits that are always observable in this kind of person. Absolutely no remorse. He can kill someone and not even bat an eyelash about it. His past. You will never get information about the real past of a person like this. It's as far as you know, it's just a mystery of where he comes from, what he's about. If you were to say, I'd love to meet your family. Oh, they died. They died when I was a kid. I was raised by my aunt, and she's, I think she's in a nursing home now, and, she's got Alzheimer's, so we can't really talk to her. And what happens? The person feels sorry for him, even more sorry. You poor life you had. It's terrible. Don't expect that there's a real personality, because what he does is he invents himself as he goes along. He becomes whatever is necessary to become. I'm just going to see if I wrote this down somewhere else. Okay, yeah. If it's in a church, probably everyone you'll deal with that comes to the church will say that he is a born-again Christian. He may say he's preparing for the ministry and wants to get into, and that may be one thing. If I only had the tuition to go and I can't go, in the school I want to go to, it's $5,000 a year. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm trying to save money, but I'm using it all in the place where I'm living. You follow the kind of behavior, and you're thinking, wow, he's going out. We want to help you in any way we can. You already have by opening the door to this person. If you say to him, look, we'd like to do a criminal check on you. And he goes, you don't trust me, do you? And you go, oh, of course we trust you. No, we'll take your word for it. Don't take their word for it. Because no one should have trouble with a criminal check. See, you can't do the criminal check. You can do a background check. But you can't do the criminal check. It has to go through him, through the person. And if he's unwilling to do it, you found someone that you don't want around. You know it. 20% falsely claim to be born again, just in general. And I'm not talking about in the church. I'm talking about in dealing with people. That is their line that they use. I'm a born again Christian. Why would they use that? Because it gets them somewhere. They become safe. They become religious. They become the kind of person you want to have your daughter with. Believe me, if they have met you and they're talking with you, and you think, well, they're only talking with me, and you have, let's say, an attractive daughter, they know about that daughter already. They already know what's there, and they're getting introduced maybe by you. Yeah, I can give you an example, a personal example about this. My daughter, I introduced a guy, world champion martial artist. He came as a visiting instructor to where I was training and working out, and I thought, I'm this Christian, the whole story. And I introduced him to my daughter, and then someone happened to say to me, "I can't believe you introduced your daughter to him." I said, "He seems like a great guy." He's a great guy. He's got one like your daughter in every stop he makes. We know from his route through the martial arts community and through the people there. And I said, "I don't believe it." I said, "Okay, here's a couple of telephone numbers. Call them up." And this guy was not fierce and fiercely powerful, dangerously powerful. My instructor, who had a world championship in karate and kickboxing as well, told me that in 55 times where he fought with this guy, he was never able to get a glove on him, not even once. He was that fast and that dangerous. And he said, you better do something. And I felt, I introduced my daughter to this guy. I didn't know what to do. My daughter thought he was great. Thought, "You can't be serious." I said, "You can't ever see him again." She said, she became hysterical about that. I said, "I got to do what I've got to do." So I called him up and I said, and here's how personality comes out. Listen to this. I say to him, "Listen, I'm just going to tell you straight out, you are never to see my daughter again." And he laughs a bit and then says, "How do you plan to enforce that?" I said, "Well, there is one way you can. You got to kill me first." And I said, "Please don't think I'm joking around with you, because I'm not joking. I'm not making a joke at all. Do it. Go for it. Because my daughter means more to me than my life. And you do it, and my daughter will know that what I've said to her about you is true." And I told the guy who told me about it, my instructor, I told him, and he said, "You said that to him? Are you crazy?" And he told me later, he said he got a call from him, and he said that the call went like this: "You told him about me, didn't you?" This is my instructor, who, he is not intimidated by anyone. And he said, "Well, I just said a few things." He said, "That's enough for you. That's it." And he said to me, we talked later, and he said, "Rich, I am totally expecting that one night I walk out of here at 11 o'clock, it's quiet on the street, that there's going to be a baseball bat that comes down on my head, and my life is going to be over, and there won't even be the sign that this phantom ever existed. And it'll be left like that." Now, that was quite a number of years ago, and it didn't happen. But that's the kind of thing, enough so that someone like myself was completely tricked by this guy, totally. My daughter was angry at me for a while, and then started hearing things about him and realized that it was true, and became thankful. I didn't care, actually, if she was thanked me for it or not. As long as it never was going to happen again, that she would ever see this person. And by God's grace, that happened. But we were very, very blessed by God and fortunate in the right sense of what that, I'm not talking about fortune, but God's providential care on our lives to protect her, because it's few that get really protected from people like this. And he would come when he visited the martial arts studio to teach there for a week or so on his way around North America. He just would say, "I want to go to church with you because, as a Christian, I want to find it, and I know that I've heard you have a good church." Every word is right by these guys. They figure out exactly what your weakest spot or your open spot is, and they will get you on that, and you will be facing an enemy that you have no idea of its tenacity and its volatility and its danger. 10% of psychopaths falsely claim that they were military heroes. They lie about serving in the military and special forces. Navy SEAL imposters are 300 to 1. 300 to 1. According to a research that's been used to expose this, you have no idea how many non-Navy SEAL people there are going in, because why would they do this? Women love these guys, and they're liars. They pretend to be these guys, and they're nothing. They have nothing. Most of them have not finished school, have not done anything with a sense of discipline to work it straight through to the end. But if you talk with them, you would think, and they're so convincing. Be careful when you're being convinced. The biggest problem with this, by the way, any questions while we're going on? Oh, by the way, another 4% falsely claim to be law enforcement. And by law enforcement, they're not saying they're police officers. They're saying they're CIA, FBI, or spies. Of course, those are the things that get them. Wow, tell us about some of your exploits. It is the easiest thing in the world for them to tell you about all their exploits that are none, but they've watched the movies, they know all about it, and they can tell you exactly what you believe they're being totally impressed about. I say, in your church, you have to have, and pastors should know about it. You should talk to your pastors about this. They should have a real knowledge of these people. They are like an epidemic coming into the church simply because the church is a feeding ground, and they have a feeding frenzy. It doesn't matter if they're married. It doesn't matter if they have 3 or 4 other women. They could have women who are Muslims and Christians and Buddhists. It doesn't matter. They've got them all over the place. And even when they end a relationship, they come back to that relationship when they want something. And they always want something because they're always coming back, unless they know that it's going to be really deadly for them to come back. Or if, by God's grace, you get them out of the relationship before the relationship really begins, as I mentioned in an earlier one I used from my own experience. But that was enormously close call, I think, looking back at it. And you don't want to live that way. So you have to be vigilant. We have people in our congregation who, on their children, will do a background check on a guy. I mean, it just sort of permeated through the church, and they're not embarrassed. Some people in the church say, "Oh, you're being so crazy, paranoid." No, they're not. A young woman in our church met a guy that we didn't know, and it was a guy who everyone liked. He smiling, charming, great stories about his life and everything else. And at a certain point, they talked about getting married, and he wanted to do it quickly. So I set up an appointment. By the way, I never officiate over marriage, never marry a couple unless they've known each other for at least 1 year. And that doesn't mean I'm right or wrong about that timing. They can go somewhere else. I had a couple in my church, and I knew the guy. I knew the guy because of the previous marriage that he had. And he was wanting to marry someone in our congregation. And I was very strongly against this, even though he was trying to claim to me that he was in the okay on the marriage. Anyway, it wasn't. And I actually went and met his ex-wife, who had been left by her second husband with whom she had 2 little babies with. She left the guy and she said, for me to tell you what I think about the person you're asking about, I'll put it this way. I can't stand my present husband whom I left. He was a bad guy. I'd be with him before I'd be with the other guy. And the woman in my church wouldn't listen, so I didn't marry them. She got married, though. They came back to the church. And one day she comes up to me, and he's really very ticked off. He sees her talking with me. And she said, I've got to talk with you. I've made a very big mistake. I said, what? She said, I married him. You know that? I said, of course I know that. You're both in the church now. Yeah. I said, what do you mean when did you know it was a mistake? He said, day 3 of our honeymoon. Day 3, and it got worse and worse. I won't go into their story at this point, but with this other one I mentioned that was happening in the church, he wanted to rush this. To me, when you've got a future bride who's like 21 years old, you're older, you're still not needing to be in a rush. What's the rush? So he's sitting there, the parents are there, the girl is there, he's there, I'm there. We have this first premarital counseling session. I don't know how careful you pastors are about doing premarital counseling, but you better be careful, really careful. Every couple I do that hasn't spoken to other couples about it, at one point in the premarital counseling, they always say to me, why are you trying to break us up? That's what it seems like to us. We've talked about this. It seems like you were trying to break us up. I go, so what? Yeah, of course I'm trying to break you up. Why would you do that? What kind of pastor are you? I said, it's one who wants to protect your lives. Well, how are you protecting our life doing that? Because if I can break you up, then you shouldn't even be together. If I can say something that you break up your relationship, what kind of relationship have you got? Who am I? What am I doing? I'm not saying anything rotten or evil. I'm just challenging you on everything. I play the good cop, bad cop, both in those sessions. When it's time to move to a different persona, it can be done because you need to push people to really take a look and not just be moved and make a life-committed decision based upon the fact, as this woman said to me when I right to her future husband's face, I said, this is what he's like, this is what I know, this is what I've heard, this is what people have told me, this is what I've seen, and you're going to be the recipient of this. Oh no, we love each other too much. It'll never happen to us. It happened in 3 days. 3 days with this other situation. There we are in the room together. They don't know each other long. They want a quick wedding. And so I present to him like this. I go, you really love her, so you'd be willing to wait, wouldn't you? I'm not saying that you should or anything. You'd be willing, if you had to wait and really, it's just you'd like to do it quickly, I know, but you would be. How long would you be willing to wait? Oh, it doesn't matter. I said, okay, it doesn't matter. How about 5 years? How about 5 years? Oh, wow. Pastor Ganz, that's really pushing it. That's much too far. I said, oh, really? Okay. 2 is even almost nothing compared to 5. Would you be willing to do 2? And he says to me, of course, 2 I'd be willing to. I said, okay, do I have your word on this? I want you to shake my hand in front of your family here. 2 years. 2 years before you get the 2 of you get married. He said, of course I would. We shook hands. And that ended the session. That was all I wanted, actually, in that session, was him to agree to some time. I would have been satisfied with a year, to be very blunt to you folks about it. But he gave me 2, and that made me feel even better because I felt there was much more time that was needed to see what's going on in this relationship. You know what happened? 2 weeks later, on a Lord's Day morning, during the worship service, she had said she was sick, so she stayed home. He drove into to their house, packed up her things, moved her out, and moved her into, not sure if right then it was his house, and he lived somewhere else during that time. And Here's the way they concocted this story became concocted. Because I said, I will never deal with this guy other than to do whatever I can to help break this up. And because he lied, I mean, right to the face of everyone in that room, including you, she said, no, he didn't lie. Don't you see what you did? He made it clear to me. You manipulated him so that he had no choice. I manipulated, and then why didn't he take the 5-year? I didn't get the 5-year deal that I went for. He said the 2 was fine. So he went, I said, when did he say that that was no good? When we were driving home that day. He said, look what he did to me. Now this was a woman, I'll show you how powerful these guys can be. This woman on our farm, from the time she was a kid, she wanted to get married on our farm. And in the barn, actually. She was there from a family in the woods and have their own barns and stuff, but not big enough. We have a big barn. We were going to do it. They even started doing things that fit she and her brothers to work on the barn to make it right. If the day came that she would get married. And she also said this, as she grew up, I would never marry anyone who wouldn't want Pastor Ganz to do the marriage. Well, he didn't want to even see me have anything to do with me. It didn't matter to her at that point. She had forgotten everything. And what we recognized, she wasn't even the same person. This is what happens. This is what you're dealing with. It is so deadly and so dangerous. Any questions at this point? Because I'm going to move to another topic on there, dealing with victims in a moment. Yeah.
If a person is a psychopath, does he know that he is one?
No. I mean, he's not going around thinking, I'm the smartest psychopath in the block, or anything like that. What he's thinking is this. I want what I want, and I always get what I want, and I'm going to get it now. And I don't care what you call me or what you say about me. Because do I love that person? Oh, if it's to you, of course I do. You stupid jerk. What are you talking about, love? Don't give me that, you're a line. I live my life, and you suckers live your stupid lives, so don't give me any garbage from you. It's sort of like that. It's that's the kind of and quality of person that you're dealing with. And there's something, you see, that there's no internal way of supervising their own thinking about themselves or saying there's no sense of right or wrong. The only thing that matters is getting what I want when I want it. That's it. And they managed to get Steve, and then Barb. Yeah, Steve.
How would you describe people who fall short of the violent characteristic? I'm thinking.
Yes, I meant to talk about that. Yeah.
That I had to unfortunately become acquainted with in a marriage. And I mean, there was threats of violence and so on, but everything you talked about was there except the violence.
Right.
And a man that I know, he's actually a pastor in an evangelical church, and he fits all of this except for
The violence.
the violence.
Psychopathy, yes.
Yeah, I know. What is that?
Okay, that can
How do
still
we
be,
deal with
that is still the same kind of person. There only approximately 5% of these individuals do violence. That's going up, by the way, all the time. And I think what's contributing to it is the television, because they're seeing how easy it is, really. They're seeing the success stories, but the forensics also let you know, they let you know, we discovered this one, but for everyone we discovered, there's 100 that lie, never answered. And they go, 100 to 1, I like those odds. And by the way, they enjoy killing. They enjoy killing animals, they enjoy killing people. They have no concern that it's a human being. They don't even, they've lost, if they ever had it, that sense of this life means something. In those forensics, which I do watch, and I don't watch that much television, but I am very, very interested in this. When you watch them, you see what it, because the actual families are brought on, and they're broken, destroyed people. Their daughters have been, raped and murdered and done horrible violence to, and there's been no recourse. And even when there is, and they catch them in that 1 out of 100, they'll almost always say, it doesn't bring back our daughter, but we're thankful that this person was stopped from doing it. You cringe every time you hear that what they're going to get in prison is something like 8 to 20 instead of that you're an animal, you can never get out. Or if it's a vicious murder, that they get life imprisonment instead of, torture. I shouldn't say it that way, but, death.
But
Actually,
what I'm
yeah.
asking about is,
What do you do? Yeah,
what do we do
I tell you.
as pastors, for instance, as fathers, as friends, as presbyters,
Yeah.
when you see this
You do the same thing. Yes, there's no violence. There's, you know what I say? There's no violence yet.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to move, because when you get in that relationship, you plan to get everything you want to get. And if you don't get it, then what happens next is up for grabs, because the violent ones start violently somewhere. It's not as if, they've always been doing it. They start somewhere where they say, I'm not going to take that. You're done. And they do it. And they think they're going to get away. And that's the other interesting thing. Even on those forensic episodes, when you see it, they always believe they're above the law. They're not going to get caught.
But how do we unmask this in these kind of
Okay, you remember the character traits that I mentioned at the beginning. Remember these, and I'm going to give you a few books to read. I'm going to mention a few books that I would want you to read that will help you. And Barb, go ahead.
Something that we found in our church, Courtney taught me, in 2 Timothy 3, it talks about, and I think we should say this, how they come in and they
Yes.
go to the women.
Read it, yeah.
Okay. They go to
No, finish the idea first.
They go to the weak women, and that the husband's not very strong in the faith, and that's the women they target, and they get them to come on their side. And it says in 2 Timothy 3, people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, or disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people, for among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth.
Thank you so much.
In our church was that
Yeah.
he got those women
And I can testify to that.
She
Not just the woman, but the weaker women in the church who then supported this, supported it. In the situation that I mentioned, that was from our church, where, by the way, they were gone and they got married, and the parents wouldn't go to the wedding. I wasn't, of course, asked to be in it. I was just in her memory train. I was just this incorrigibly unmoving person who refused to see that he was a wonderful guy. Of course, he wouldn't lie to you. You forced him to say what he said. But here's one thing that happened in that situation. He lived 2.5 hours away from where our church is, so it's far distance. And in the town he lived, a guy was, they assumed, murdered because they never found his body. And it was a guy that people in the family who had been really checking on this guy to see if any connection, like were there restraining orders against him, women he'd married, people who knew him from going back to his university days, checking out things there. It was interesting. There was a guy who was murdered, and it was a known homosexual guy who was murdered, and the body never found. worked at the same place that he worked at, and he was never even questioned about this. Well, the girl's mom said, I just have a sense he did this. He did this. He's somehow involved in this. Now, about 4 months later, they get a letter. This is before she's married. They get a letter from the daughter, and the letter says, what an interesting experience we had today. We were walking down the river, and it had just broken up from the winter, and we're about 100 yards away, and I don't even want to say his name because it's going to be on be taped, but and said, he said to me, he looked at me and said, you know, they never found him. Wouldn't it be interesting if just by the river we found his body? Wouldn't it? And they walked about 100 yards down, and she goes, oh, I see something there. And he goes, yeah, okay. And she says, I got to go out and see what it is. And he grabs her and takes her. She writes this whole thing in a letter to her family. And it was a body. And the police got there. They were gone, got the body, and they refused to even listen to that story. She tried to tell the police about this, and you could say just a coincidence they would say something like this. I mean, obviously, who knows? He was just thinking maybe it was, and the ice broke and the guy's going to come up. None of us who were involved in this thought that way. We all thought this is who we're dealing with. This is what we're up against. Well, he had never done anything. I say the treatment, though, that you do, especially if you're dealing with a person, you treat it exactly as if none of them are going to, you're not going to know their violence because you're not going to even have any record of violent actions, and you're not going to have an easy time getting it. You're going to have to go through it's really hard to accomplish that part of it. A background check doesn't tell you those kinds of things, and that's where it's very limited. So even in our churches, getting a background check doesn't necessarily give you any guarantee of what you're going to find that will answer your concern. But it's definitely necessary. And it's necessary to get to know some people in law enforcement so you have access. I've got an inspector in our congregation. She's willing to do anything, anytime when we have, and she's more sensitive to these things than we are. She'll say, I'm going to do a check, I want it so-and-so. I don't like, what I'm saying. Go for it. Really. We say, is this how we have to live? Absolutely, it's how we have to live. Let's not be stupid. We are dealing with deadly, deadly dangers in people's lives. Your 15, 16-year-old daughter, 17, all you have to do is befriend a person, and then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, I've just met the most wonderful guy I've ever met in my life. He knows how to be that. You want to do whatever you can to protect against that. I'm going to give you a sheet where you take a look. I want to take some time on victims, but I'm going to give you a sheet to copy because some of the books, there's a man, Robert Hare, he's a clinical psychologist who is the leading researcher on this whole area. And there's several books by him, and there's more and more books coming out now. One is Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. Dangerous Liaisons, How to Recognize and Escape from Psychopathic Seduction. Third is Dark Souls, Healing and Recovering from Toxic Relationships. And fourth, The Mind Control Manual. These are four. Take it, copy it for yourselves, or whoever wants a copy of those titles, and get them and read. The author is different in each. Robert Hare is Without Conscience. Claudia Moscovici is Dangerously As Owns, and I think she was in one of those. Dark Souls is Sarah Strudwick, and the Mind Control Manual, which may be the most valuable, is Dr. David McDermott. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Whoever wants that, just, okay, thank you. And here's what's interesting. In that family, the parents have never seen their daughter again from the day she left, and that's now maybe 4 years. And here's what's interesting. One of the things they like to do is just isolate their prey that they've caught. And here's the thing. They want to see, they don't want to see him ever again. And you can understand why, what happened. Talking about control, I could tell you the things that were done that were controlling, totally controlling, but forget that for a second. It's just, they say, please just visit us. He says, unless I go into that home, you don't go into that home. Can we just meet at Tim Hortons? No, yes, you can. I'm there. That's when you meet him. And the control of your life, you become living even, and you don't want to admit it to yourself, and it can go for years until suddenly you see the light and you're living in a prison. You're living in a prison controlled by this dictator. Everything is controlled. You say, I want to go see my mom or my mom and dad or whatever. No, yes, we can do it. I'm there too. And that's the way it goes. And that's the beginning of the end of your life. And so when this person gets a Facebook picture and little story that's from someone who gave it to her that says, your daughter has been very, very sick. And it says, the husband says, I've been taking care of the drugs. It's a strep infection that we've been told, and 5 days outside of the hospital. Do you know what a strep infection brings about? Flesh-eating disease, death. It's that quick. We had a woman from our congregation die because she went to hospital with what she thought was a flu. It was a strep infection. It wasn't a virus. And boom, she was dead within a day. Young woman, and she was pregnant at the time. And when the mom saw this thing with, she was calling different people who could have access to her daughter. Please get her into a hospital. She's got to be. This could be horrible. So, see, the dangers are enormous in this. Potential dangers, what you're dealing with. So, yeah. A few things in the time we have. Any other questions? Yes, Barb.
Is there any hope that they can
Be changed?
repent and become a believer?
Well, with God, all things are possible. But they go in and so the makeup, what they say in the books is they will never, this is just the books I'm talking about now. And it's easy to say anything is possible. Of course they can change. I don't know. I haven't heard a single story of a bona fide guy who's like this, who has become, and I look seriously at this, and Nancy and I have read quite a number of books, Nancy more than I, and there's no recounting of a single person. Like Steve is not that guy from your church. He's not going to be different. And if what we heard, I told you the call I got about her screaming. Who knows what's going on in her life, which she, being so committed as she is to this situation, would never even tell her folks, because she knows what her father would do. I mean, the guy would be dead, even if the dad who did that would be in prison for the rest of his life. He wouldn't care. He'd be there and fight. Seriously, the guy would do it. And I'm not exaggerating. And I mean, which father wouldn't, if you find that your daughter's been being beaten.
Did I understand you to say that this gal called since she's been married?
No. No, this one, on this, it was they were renting an apartment, and the person who owned the house that she was renting it in, lived in the apartment upstairs, knew of me, as she was a Christian, and they went into this place where they were able to get, an apartment there. And because I said, why did you do this? Why'd you? He seemed so nice. Oh, thank you. Thanks. And wait, so she called, and then I said, and they told me the names. I said, this is them. Get the police on this. And the next day they were gone. Who knows what this guy could have done? For example, phone tapped. He lives in the house. How much does it do to do that? And he hears a phone call. I know.
So there's been no contact.
No, they've had.
Woman-
They haven't had any contact with. Oh, they have. Has it been? What kind of contact has it been?
The grandmother's in a nursing home, and she Facebooks back and forth with the granddaughter.
Oh, so the grandmother in the nursing home has got contact.
The funeral of her
Other grandma. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. That's.
I guess, I'm naive enough that I go after the person to
Uh-huh.
save the woman if need be.
Yeah.
And Elmer and I have been shot at because we've done that, so I know,
Good.
I know wherever I speak.
Thank you. That's
I really struggle with
with what?
if I can find out, I being the church, I'm not saying back and still vigilante, I'm saying the church. If I can find out where they are, then why would I not go to that door unannounced?
Here's the thing. I think I spoke to Brian about that. Excuse me. I spoke to the guy about that, and they were gone.
I understand.
They're gone. But now finding out where. Oh yeah, that could be done. But you see, you have no connection when you have a 30-year-old daughter who's saying, "Get out of my life, leave me alone." Do you know what the average number of times that you know about wife abuse, right? What are the average number of times a wife gets physically abused, seriously, I'm not talking even the thing I mentioned, the slap in the face, before she leaves? What do you think it is?
Too many. I mean,
What do you-
hundreds upon hundreds.
No, it's not that much, because if it was hundreds, she'd be dead. It's 41 times is the average amount of times that a woman has been beaten up by her husband before she leaves him. Can you comprehend? I mean, we're talking about black eyes, broken noses, broken arms, legs. We're talking about that kind of beatings 41 times before. See, they know who to pick. That's the real clinker to the whole thing. They pick someone who they know that this is a person who's thinking, I'm doing this till death do us part. And he's going, you got it right, dear. That's exactly the way it's going to be. Yeah, you got it. Till death. Don't ever forget that. Because I won't. And she doesn't even know they're talking about the two completely different things. Because he can't even imagine what it means to be with a woman out of love for your entire life. He can't even think. Those terms don't make any sense. There's a string of women all around. Promiscuity is his middle name. One of the things that I wanted to say in terms of helping the victims, probably the most important thing, what do you think they think about what they've gone through? Who do you think they blame for it? Themselves. They blame themselves. They are the fault that it's like this. And they have to learn that it's not their fault. That's probably the first thing. This is not your fault. And the second thing is, it's really important to help them find what it is that makes them so vulnerable. And do you know why? You want them to find out what it is that makes them so vulnerable? So that they know this, so they won't be attracted to this kind of person again. Because the normal way of thinking is that it repeats itself, and they get into the same kind of abusive, violent relationship again and again, if they get out of the first one, which is not normal for that to happen. If that's not done, they're going to find themselves in the same kind of situations. Examples that attract a psychopath are very interesting. Generosity, a nurturing heart, being naive, having money, being an empathic person. They have no idea what empathy is, but that's what they look for, that kind of person. That kind of person, the only person that one is not vulnerable to is a really honest, decent, caring, empathic guy. And you're not being too far off if you say, look, train your daughters to be very careful because those guys are few and far between. They really are. It's not like the guy next door is necessarily going to be your person like that. They're going to potentially get themselves into a very dangerous liaison, as that book mentions there. The traits that I mentioned about a woman that the guy is looking for, these are good things. In a good relationship, this is what a relationship is built on. But for a predator, it's exactly what he's looking for. This is what he is looking for because this is a person who will never leave him. They'll stay whatever you say. They'll follow your orders. They'll do whatever you want them to do. And they're just exactly what these predators look for. One of the things you can say, I mean, even to teach your daughters or people in the churches, say, look, you're in a relationship, don't be too open too quickly, don't be too generous, don't be too empathic, don't be too nurturing. Stay back a bit, see what the person's like. Now, there are women who are psychopaths. There are, they exist. Much, much smaller percentage. By the way, I have friends of mine, Christian men, who will say to me that, oh, Rich, the statistics are that women are as much men beaters as men are women beaters. If that statistic is accurate, which I haven't found it to be, I'll say two things about that. First of all, it wouldn't be the same kind of beating. What a woman would do, apart from the women who get so totally destroyed by this that they actually get a gun and shoot the guy, that happens. But it's not a common thing, it just happens. The kind of abuse is totally different, number one. And, there's a second thing there that I just want to try and, can't think of it right now. Yeah, but even that statistic alone, it's considered abuse if a woman slaps a guy in the face. It's a little different than a guy hauling back and giving, a crack to the face with, a strong, powerful hand. I'm not saying there aren't some powerful women, don't get me wrong, but I'm just talking just within our own context of understanding the nature of different people. We know what they're capable of doing. Let's not pretend that we don't want to, I don't want to be a feminist, so I'm going to say women are just as rotten as men in these. They're not. They're just not. They don't have the ability, the power, the strength to pull that off if they wanted to, and I think many of them would like to. And they still can't do it. And that's where it comes with the shootings that happen from women, which is very, if it's going to be that's where the way they choose to do it, because you can't just go in and grab them and say, I've had enough, and haul off. It's not going to work. You're going to be a goner. Don't start feeling sorry for these guys when they come to you and they try and explain and look at their situation. Don't do it. And the girls need to know, don't do that. Don't fall for this. Don't fall for their sob story. They're trying to get you. They're trying to get back. They have to remember, do you remember how you got into this? You fell for a line. Don't fall for it again. They need encouragement at building a biblical view of themselves. They need to start a whole rebuilding process. They need to see what it means to be. See, the psychologists will say they need to build self-esteem, and I don't call it that because I'm not saying they shouldn't have another. I want to see a biblical view of themselves. It's not the view of esteeming oneself. It's the view of seeing, I am a person. I really am a person. I have honest needs. I have dignity. I'm created in the image of God. I do not believe that I'm the kind of person who deserves, because what they'll say, you deserve this, don't you see it? And then, bam, no. They have to see they don't. No one deserves that, and certainly not a wife from her husband. Or a child from a father. I mean, the same thing. Same thing happening with kids and having a psychopathic dad. You spilled your milk, you stupid little kid. Smack. Goes through the generations. The kids grow up thinking they're worthless pieces of junk. The wives already believe that about themselves. That's why they can also think they deserve this, that they're because I'm nothing. I don't deserve any better than this. They need to see you've done nothing to deserve this. You are not at fault. And you have no idea how easy it is to blame yourself for this kind of horror that's being done to you. And it's so wrong. And that's why that's where the church can come in and really help to produce a whole new mindset. Restoration of broken lives, and that's what you're dealing with. You want to see them come. You want to see these victims come and be able to help them so they never get into a victim situation like that again. As for, again, the question, can they change? With God, all things are possible. In the people I've dealt with, and I've dealt with quite a few of these guys, I've never seen it, because the more they come challenged, the quicker they are to get out of there and find another feeding ground. Really, that's... And when they're in a church with a pastor who doesn't care in terms of how the church grows or not, in that sense, who's not there for the numerics of it, so, oh, yeah, we'll take you. You know, I've seen enough that I wanted to get rid of, that I know I'd rather them, definitely they want to be here for, they'll know the only reason they're here is for what it's about as a church. And they're not going to be able to play games with me, and they'll know what I would do if I had to. They'll know that about me. I'd like to see it in other churches, that it's prepared to deal with this danger, because the church is one of the last safe havens for these men. So the culture is acting up in arms. The church is still embracing. Be careful who you embrace. When it says, but love all people, well, wait a minute. Love them. The best thing you can do to love one of these people is to do a background check on them first. Seriously. And second, the second thing you can do is to say to them, we love you, keep away from our daughters here. Keep away from them. We don't know you. You want to stay here? Don't get involved. We'll let you know when it's okay. Well, what do you own these people? You already know something. If they would say anything to you other than, that's okay, and we really will respect that. And if they don't respect it, you don't give them a second chance. If you see them messing around with one of the girls there, you say, you know something, we made a deal, you broke the deal. Oh, sorry about that. No, you don't have to be sorry, because you're out of here. You know, people have said to me, who were you to throw people out of the church? Because I do. I say, I'm a pastor. That's who I am. Well, don't you have to have a trial first? I've had a trial with him being here. That was my trial. Now he's convicted, he's out. And I say, if he doesn't like it, he can take it to presbytery. He's free to do that. He can make a complaint. I'll deal with it at that point. Right now, he's not coming back. I've had people oppose that approach to it. So what? I really don't care on that level. Church is supposed to be a safe haven for God's people. I'm not going to, but there's nothing that says I can't say get out of here. The guy can then bring charges against me for throwing him out of church. Okay, I'll deal with it when it comes. I'm not going to deal with him sitting around the church. And then making a real game of it. Because that's what they want. They want a game. They want to win. They're sure they can win. And I've had my case with one this year, and I don't want to have another one again. Everything can be different, because what they want and what they want to destroy can be very different things, but you don't want destruction in the church. It's the house of God, and you want to protect God's people. We finished? We're finished. Father, I just pray that you would help us all to see that our families, especially our daughters, receive your protection and blessing. Let them not be seduced by those who are out to destroy their lives, and help the church to be a truly safe haven where we treat one another with respect. And if we see evil lurking in the shadows, that we don't wait until it hits before acting, that we act promptly, diligently, swiftly, and decisively. And we use your word to guide us in our actions one with another, but we look at the nature of the person we're dealing with. And when we see that it's counter to everything that is the fruit of the Spirit, that we don't just let it continue, that we act on it for your glory, for the protection of our people, for the salvation of souls, and even for the eternal well-being of predators like that they wouldn't have more guilt to add up onto their ugliness of their charts already. In Jesus' name, amen.